Suicide. Is this an unpardonable sin resulting in eternal damnation even to those who believed in Jesus Christ? What does the church teach? Okay. See, I told you these were getting harder. For something to be a sin, remember we have two types of sin: mortal sins and venial sins. Venial sins are those small things like little white lies. You know, we go to the bank, we sign something, we take the pen with us, we recognize it after we're home, like, oh, I accidentally took it. You could take it back. You know, you can take them back. Little sins. We talked about this the last time a little bit. Then you have the mortal sins, which are the big sins, like breaking the 10 Commandments, you know, murdering someone, bearing false witness, other gods before God, all of those big things. Adultery falls into that, the big sins. Well, the church teaches that little venial sins, no matter how many there are, will never equal a mortal sin. We shouldn't do them, but they're not the same as the mortal sins. You could have 1 billion of these little sins. You'll spend a while in purgatory getting rid of them, but you won't be sentenced to hell straight away because of it. Mortal sins are a little different, and even St. Paul talks about them when he says there's the difference between the sins. Some are deadly sins. That's what mortal means, deadly sins. Sins that completely rupture your relationship with God and His church, and sins that can send us straight to hell. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Remember Monopoly? We are supposed to confess all mortal sins, and we should confess venial sins if we have them. We talked about all of that stuff, like, how to get rid of them. You can confess, you can use holy water, you can, all these other things. If you don't know what to do, you can look it up on Google, venial sins, holy water, something like that, and you have a whole list of other things that wash them away. There's ways of getting around them, ways in which we are reminded of sacraments. Then we have a sin itself. By definition, a mortal sin requires 3 things in order to be a mortal sin. If any of these things are missing, it is not a mortal sin, it's still venial, even though it's a sin. One is, it must be a serious matter, something serious in the sin sense. We'll take adultery as an example. Adultery is always a serious offense against God. 2, you must know that it is wrong and know that you shouldn't do it. Think about the fact that you shouldn't do it and still choose to do it. In other words, you don't accidentally do it. You know that it's wrong. You know that you shouldn't do it. You think to yourself, you reflect, should I do this? Should I not do this? I know I really shouldn't. That debate that goes on. And then you decide you want to do it. The third thing is freedom of will, meaning no one's forcing you to do it. No one's holding a gun to your head and telling you to do it. No one is threatening you if you don't do it, something's going to happen to you or your family. There's nothing that is forcing you to do it at all. So it's serious, you know that it's wrong, no one's forcing you to do it, and you still do it. That makes it mortal. Now when it comes to suicide, murder, which is what it is always a serious sin, so that's check. They probably thought about whether they should or shouldn't do it. Maybe. Check. If they plan ahead, they thought about it. But what about that third piece, where it says that they have freedom of conscience, freedom of will, where nothing is forcing them to do it? We might say, well, no one forced them to commit suicide, but how do we know what's going on in their head, what they're thinking about, what they're feeling, what chemicals might be off that have inspired them to do it? Remember, some of these chemicals for these medications on TV, it says, may cause suicidal thoughts. That's a side effect of some of these medications they advertise on TV. If it could cause suicidal thoughts, is that person making a free choice? Or is it a choice that is pushed by medication, a choice that's pushed by some psychological problem, something that's pushed by a chemical offset in their own mind? Are they free to make that choice? We don't know. So the answer to the question of, is it an unpardonable sin, is no. God can forgive any sin He wants. God is not trying to condemn us. He's looking for ways to help us. He's not looking for an excuse to condemn us. And if this person is not in their right mind and does something and it results in their death, have they committed a sin? The church would say, not necessarily. We never judge. The church used to say that they were condemned and everything. The church has since changed its stance and said, we don't know the state of their mind, we don't know the state of their soul. Let God be the judge, and let us err on the side of charity, assuming that they are not condemned. And if they are condemned, those prayers that we offer for them, God will give them to those souls that need them the most. So there's no wasted prayer. But if we, on our own, condemn someone who isn't condemned by God, are we not taking the place of God? We don't condemn anybody to hell. We entrust them to God's mercy, and we let God sort it out. But can they be forgiven? Yes, because they may not have committed a sin that would be mortal by the definition of the church. Next question, which also relates to suicide. Regarding the confessional, if an individual confesses that they're contemplating suicide, do you need to take action? How is it handled? Anytime that anything is confessed or discussed in a confessional, the priest cannot say or do anything about it outside of that box. I have had people actually confess murder and stuff who may or may not be in prison. I know that some who are in prison have confessed, but that doesn't mean that all the ones that I've heard were there. I cannot go to the police and say, so-and-so confessed their crimes. I can't go to the warden of the jail and say, so-and-so who's on trial for murder, who's claiming to be innocent, confessed to me that they actually did the crime that they're accused of. And in a similar way, if someone tells me they're contemplating suicide, I cannot do anything outside of that box unless they come to me outside of that box and say, I'm contemplating suicide, what should I do? I can, inside the box, encourage them to call one of the hotlines. I can encourage them to contact someone. I can encourage them and even say to them that I will take them myself to a hospital where they can get some treatment. I cannot force them, and when they walk out of that box, I can't pretend that I even know what they said. If we both walk out at the same time, I cannot ask them, would you like me to take you somewhere like the hospital? Because that would be a violation of the seal of confession. It is very, very, very serious when we talk about the seal of confession. We do not reveal sins or anything that was discussed. And those are protected by law, by the way. They can't pull the priest on the stand and say, did this person confess this? It's protected, just like the lawyer-client privilege and that stuff. So, do you need to take action? You should take action as far as what you say in the box. If you say to them, I will help you, but when we leave this box, you need to ask me to help you. Otherwise, we can't. They'll understand. And if they really want the help, they will. And if they don't, you have to trust them to God and pray for them and hope for the best, knowing that if they do something, there's nothing that you could have done to help them because of the seriousness of the seal of confession. It's not always fair, but it's what we do.